Okay, great. We're gonna start the meeting with a roll call.
All right, Amanda Houston,
Here,
Julia Kitely,
Here.
Tim O'Leary, not here. Sheree Adkins.
Here.
Jessica Hopkins Hubbard.
Here.
And Corey Jones Merkel is here.
great. We're gonna move to accept the consent calendar.
I so move that we accept the consent calendar.
I second. Any public comments?
We have no public comments today.
Moving on to current library narratives.
As always, just wonderful.
We've got my list of cute stories. And my little photograph of the stubby pencils, which I loved so much.
Yes.
Since the library has short pencils.
Yeah, so cute. I love it.
That was so
The girls
cute.
love the little pencils, yeah,
They really do. Kids are
Yeah,
just fascinated
yeah.
by them. Yeah.
because they're tiny.
They're
Like
little.
that.
They're little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Good things.
Great.
And the Princess Tiara one was pretty cute. So.
Okay, moving on to reports, Library Foundation's report. They met in February.
Yes.
Met in February. I was there for the beginning of the meeting where they went over the financial report and had a healthy discussion about just what they could expect for the year. And some things that Andrew, the treasurer, wanted the board to think about in response to being fiduciary responsible for the foundation. So they voted in 2 new members and sounds like they are collecting more interest into people who want to join the foundation. So if you know of anyone, you can send them to the foundation. And I think they meet in
April. Yeah.
Cool. Moving on to the library director's report.
All right, so I don't have much of an update on our library meeting room with the leak in the floor. So they have had a few people out giving estimates, but I haven't seen anything, any final estimates or anything. We have been given a move out date of April 8th. So we are we've made a plan for how to move everything out of all of the storage rooms in the library friends room and, you know, of course, all of our storage in the library. Inside the library happens to be in that room. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to move out. So we've started that already, continuing that on Friday. And then I'll send out an email to the foundation and the library board with some dates if you're able to help with moving. We've got some dates, and if it doesn't work out for you, that's fine too. But we're trying to connect with a lot of different volunteer groups right now. So we're always getting volunteer groups reaching out to us saying, do you have a big project we can do? And we don't often have just big projects. This is a big project. So we've been, coordinating with those groups. Audrey Smith has been working on that. So yeah, we should be able to do that. We have tomorrow, the library is closed all day. It's a Friday, but we're closed all day. We're having a staff training and a staff training event all day. So several different people on staff are planning different parts of it. They're very excited about it. So in the morning, we have a scavenger hunt around town where we're going different places to meet community partners that we've worked with so that all of the staff can get a better idea of what our community partners do. And then we'll have lunch back at the library. And then we have a training with the city recorder on records retention. super exciting, but necessary. And then I've got a presentation and there's a couple of other presentations. And then we have apparently Library Olympics. So putting our skills to the test. And I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I'm very excited to see what they've come up with. So
Brenda shelves faster than anybody else.
Brenda shelves faster than anyone else. Brenda can also find anything if it's there to be found. So I hope she's on my team. I was told that I was not allowed to stay back at the library, that I had to participate with the rest of the team. I have two people on staff, Bobby and Cynthia, who have been working really hard on the activity portions. So I said, yes, I absolutely will. And
So fun.
yeah,
That'll
I'm
be
looking
great.
forward to, everyone's really looking forward to it. So we've got a taco bar for lunch, which is, it's gonna be fun and yeah,
Great.
Cool.
it's good. Let's see, other things, we are keeping an eye on, you might have heard the Institution of Museum and Library Services Institution, for some reason that sounds wrong in my head now, but so they have had some significant cuts, very significant cuts. And that is where any of the library's federal funding comes from, including LSTA grants. So that's the Library Services and Technology Act competitive grants. So those are administered through the state library. So we've been keeping an eye on that because while we don't have any direct federal fund grants right now, it also impacts the ebooks and e-audiobooks, because we get, the state library gets funding from federal funding that they put into that. The state library also puts federal funding from that into our databases, which impacts not just the public libraries, but all of the school libraries as well. That's where they get their free databases from, by the way. There's also, there's all kinds of services that the state library provides to libraries across Oregon, academic as well as school libraries, law libraries, all different kinds of libraries. So I just am reading through this email from our state librarian, Wendy Corneliuson, and she says, on Tuesday, IMLS contacted state library agencies across the country to confirm that funding for the agency is included in the continuing resolution passed on 3/14/25. This means that the state library is expecting an award letter next month for the full fiscal year 25 LSTA grant award. LSTA grants are sent out annually and cover a 2-year time frame. So the state library will have until September 30th, 2026 to spend these funds on staff, statewide services, and sub-grants.
Okay.
So they're saying that anyone who is getting the LSTA grant, those funds are still coming. So that's a really good, that's really good news for us. And she said, and today an executive order was entered into the Federal Register. It's now number 14238, and an acting director has been named for IMLS. So it sounds like for the next 2 years, funding is fairly secure. So those things are really good. Things are changing awfully fast these days. So everybody is really keeping an eye on all of that. It also impacts Oregon Battle of the Book, by the way. They get an LSTA grant. That's more than half of their funding comes from LSTA. Which, if you didn't know, Mabel Rush won Oregon Battle of the Books regionals. I got to moderate that battle.
Sweetest group of fourth graders.
They are so sweet. They're so sweet. And they're all fourth graders and they worked really hard, and it was such a joy to moderate those battles. So I really had a lot of fun, and it's always fun when a Newberg team wins too.
They're so proud of themselves. They came in pretty excited on Monday.
Yeah, as they should be, as they should be. All right, I think that is it for me on the director's report. Any questions? Okay.
So moving on to the library friends report.
Library friends, the repairs for the meeting room I have kind of a tentative number for that. And the library friends can also, well, they can't cover all of that. They can also help cover that amount. So I I would say I'm just really grateful for the library friends and their funding that supports the library in all different kinds of ways. So that's kind of, you know, between that and they're working on the plan for moving the books over to the annex. They've got their computers set up there and yeah, that's what they're working hard on these days. They have been so gracious and flexible about everything to do with the move. So I am just very, very grateful for that. So they're such an easy group to work with. And
What's the timeline for that all to be resolved? Do you know?
we're hoping before summer.
Okay.
Yeah. But they also, Public Works wants everything moved out of there. So when we do have those final numbers, they can move as quickly as possible and aren't just waiting, you know, for the other stuff to happen, which is good. And less stressful for us when we've got time to plan a move too. So, yeah.
No unfinished business, so moving on to new business. Library policy review, library card policy.
All right. So I have a small thing in our library card policy. And I do have on the second page, you'll see highlighted in yellow, the parts that I've crossed out. So the change here is it's a small one, but it will be very helpful for staff. So we offer a Newberg educator card at the Newberg Public Library. And this means that if you are in any kind of education capacity in the city of Newberg, whether it's a private school or a public school, you can come to the library and get an educator card. And the benefit of that is, first of all, not taking up space on your own personal card and being able to keep the items that you're checking out for your classroom separate from your home items, so you can, you know, figure out which is which. It used to have an added benefit of no fines, but we're a fine-free library now, so that one doesn't really matter too much. And we do, you know, we have 3 renewals unless something is on hold. So that also is something that didn't used to be as generous as it is now. So the benefit for the card is fairly limited now. It used to be a little bit more robust, but you know, we've made those things better for everyone. So I think that's good in the end. But what we used to do is offer people who are homeschooling their children a chance to get an educator card. So this was really impactful when we weren't able to give library cards to people who lived in Dundee. So now that people who live in Dundee can get a library card, there's really no point to it. So if you're homeschooling, then all of the books are at home. So, you know, there it is. But what has happened in a few different cases is people who have lived in Dayton and some other outside of Newberg, Dundee areas have somehow gotten homeschool cards, and you're supposed to be in Newberg or Dundee for that in the first place. So what we're requesting is to make these few changes so that people who are homeschooling their kids can no longer get an educator card. And I did forget one change in here, which is we were going to make it Newberg Dundee educators under number 5.
Mm-hmm.
So it says Newberg Dundee educators instead. Are there any questions about that?
No, that sounds reasonable. And there's still always that last category, or I don't remember whether it's last category. There's always the kind of either temporary, or you guys can make an exception for somebody. So if somebody didn't fall under one of these categories, you can do something about it anyway.
Yes, and we have had a couple of, you know, interesting situations in the past where you have somebody who doesn't live in Newberg, so they can't, you know, get a Newberg or Dundee card, but they're doing research around Newberg and need, you know, documents or something like that. So those are very few and far between, but we have been able to make exceptions with those. And, you know, I think for something like that, that can also fall under an educator card too, where they show their proof of where they're working as well. So, yeah, I think the policy also does account for those outliers, which is helpful for staff. All right, so then we just need a motion to go through with those changes.
I move to accept the library card policy as we just amended during the meeting.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about one of these?
Absolutely.
So I have somebody specific in mind that I work with in my space.
Mhm.
The temporary library card, would that work for a family who can't physically make it to the library? But somebody else could like go pick up books for them? It came up during
So-
OBA because I had
Yeah.
a student on a team that needed access to books,
Uh-huh,
but couldn't physically get to the library
uh-huh,
because it's too far.
okay.
So then they couldn't get a library card because you have to be there in person.
So what I would do in a situation like that is I would say, as the teacher, as the educator,
Could I just put it on my card?
there's a couple different ways. So you could put it on your educator card, but we could also, if you want to send home with them a library card application and then scan it and get it to me,
Okay,
then what we would do is we could mail the card to them, and that is how we verify their address.
okay, cool.
And
Because what they
then,
really wanted access to were the online
Online,
books,
yeah.
but they needed the card to
Yeah.
get the online books so that they
Yeah.
could read along. I was like, this
yeah,
is- okay, cool.
yeah, so in the future, anybody, feel free to, you know, take registrations and
Okay,
you can send them home, and if they can just get it back to you,
Okay.
scan them over and we can make that work.
cool, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, new business library resource system, oh, sorry, second one. Library advisory board training, review of library collection management policy.
I forgot to print that off for you. Darn it.
Okay.
So how about this? We do have a robust, so sorry about that. We do have a robust collection management policy for the library, which I would encourage you to read over. It's available online, and I'll send you the link. Make myself a note. It's several pages long, so it's probably helpful if you can just do that. Not in a, yeah. And so our collection management policy includes, these are the things we're looking for in books. This is how our selectors go about selecting those books. These are the kind of items that we're looking for. We do have a local history collection, but we are not a historical library. So what we are really trying to do is get people the books that are coming out now that they really want to read. So I know for some people, they have a nostalgic feeling of the library, and they want the books they read as children to still be there. But the truth of the matter is our collection gets a lot of use. And so the books that people loved when they were children have worn out a very long time ago. And most of the time they're not still in print. So, but we also, you know, have the capability to do interlibrary loans from outside our library system. So sometimes we are able to find those kinds of items that people are also looking for. But it also talks about how we do what we call weeding our collection, which is every year we run reports on items that haven't checked out in 2 to 3 years, kind of depending on how much room we have for that collection. And I'm sure Julia has been part of pulling the lists of books that haven't checked out for a while. And so those books are evaluated by staff. And then if they're in If they're children's books and they're still in decent condition, then those go to our turnaround book programs. Then those go back out into the community through, we have deliveries that go out to WIC and the Housing Authority and the Food Bank and Virginia Garcia and all of those kinds of different places. If they're for grownups, sometimes they might get a withdrawn sticker on them and go to little free libraries. We also have a place called Northwest Book Repository that takes books that we are no longer able to use. Sometimes the books are in very terrible condition, and in those cases, they actually pulp them and turn them into cardboard, which is great because they're getting recycled. And then other than that, they're able to resell books online oftentimes. So it's a good use to make sure that books are still getting used in different ways. And of course, some books are able to be sold in our library friends lobby sale as well. So, so there's, you know, and a really important part of keeping a strong, vibrant collection is taking out the materials that aren't being used, getting materials. That's why we have a book budget, getting materials that are updated and or replacing copies. You know, people absolutely, and I do it too, everyone does. Maybe I shouldn't say everyone because that's an absolute, but almost everyone judges the book by its cover, right? Especially kids. And so if you have an outdated book cover, even though it's a great story, chances of that item getting checked out are pretty slim. But when you refresh that, like the one I can think of too is Encyclopedia Brown. I read those books when I was a kid and I loved them. And they have been republished with different covers so often. And when they get updated, guess what? They start checking out again.
Right.
So, you know, this is how we grow our library collection. And this is how we get our books out to our people too, is by having appealing items that people see on the shelf that they want to check out. So we've been working hard on that this week. Jessica's been working on that, especially upstairs in the nonfiction section. And then also in that policy is what happens if there's a challenge to a book. So it's good to read over that process too. So briefly, if there's a challenge to a book, that book or item, I should say, the item goes to me and I review it and I decide whether it should stay in the collection or not. And then I report back to the person. And if they are unhappy with my decision, then the next thing is it comes to the library advisory board, in which case we would make sure everybody had a chance to either, you know, view or read that item, and then you would discuss it, and then your decision is the final decision. So it's just helpful to kind of read through some of those processes
How
too.
often has something made it to the library advisory board for review?
I do not know the last time that happened. So I think it's not very often.
Infrequent.
It's very infrequent. And I think, you know, for the most part, when people understand that the library is for everyone, so we will absolutely have books that you agree with and absolutely have books that you don't agree with. And so, you know, for the entire community, we just need to make sure that we have, you know, books for
That
everybody.
appeal to everybody.
Right. And so if you don't like a book, that is totally fine. You do not need to read it. If you are offended by a book, that is totally fine. You do not need to read it. Your child does not need to read it. You know, that's your decision.
Yeah.
So most of the time, the first step is a conversation about that. And then most of the time that is, people are understanding of that, and that's where it ends. So, yeah,
Well,
but
I
there
know-
also is a
yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In last month's library comments or whatever, there was a gentleman who talked about, while I may not agree with everything in the library, I like the fact that all the choices are there. So.
Yes, right? That's a good way to say that too. I really appreciated that. It's like, yes, that's how this should work,
That's
right?
I don't want to read
We're a
these books.
very-
I'm not going to.
Right? We're a very community, and you know, when we're collection developers, we buy books that we may disagree with, but our job as librarians is to make sure that we have a balanced collection. And so we're looking to find, you know, different points of view. So, yeah, so I'll make sure I send that out.
Okay.
So no hurry in reviewing that, just Just a reminder, and I'll link to all the other library policies too, because those are good things. As we, continue to update them throughout the year, it's also just kind of a good thing to be familiar with what is in there.
Moving on to library resource of the month, the read alongs.
So read-alongs. So this is a new library collection. Cherie, I don't know if you can see the picture or not very well, but I've brought picture books that have a audio component to them. So you can press the power button and then play them.
I've never seen those before.
You haven't seen them
No,
before?
that's so cool.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. So Shauna's gonna love it.
So we have been getting extremely positive feedback about these. Amanda's been working hard on this collection. She's been going after grants since it is an expensive collection to develop. Most of the ones we have are both in English and Spanish, and that's been really helpful for, some of our Spanish speakers, well, for a variety of people. So we have our Spanish speakers whose parents are enjoying them because it's reading both in English and in Spanish. And we have our English speakers who are learning Spanish who are enjoying that for the same reason. So it's been a super popular collection, and it's going to continue to expand. I know we're looking for more grant funding as well as using some of our collection development budget, since it's obviously part of the collection now. I would say we probably have about 50 to 75 books at this time. So it's been really great.
What's the difference between read along mode and learning?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, they are very fun.
That we really
Right?
Do they have its own section in the children's?
They do have their own section, so they are next to the toddler totes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Eventually, I know there's another plan for them, but we also need some more shelving in order to make that happen. So as it continues to grow, we'll expand the space too.
Are there any on like chapter books? Or is it just picture?
It is just picture books. It is just picture books. But what we often do for people who are looking for chapter books is we'll get them a playaway, which is like an MP3 player, and then we'll find the chapter book for them as well, so that they can read along that way,
Okay.
even though it doesn't have like the helpful little jingle to turn the
Yeah.
page, which can be really helpful too. But all of the audiobooks that we have in our children's library are unabridged. So anything you get will be the full audio form of what you can read with your eyes.
Wow.
I have I all of a sudden have a ton of kids in my reading interventions that want to do them.
Oh, that's so neat.
Yeah, so.
I love it. And the library will start purchasing those on Libby as far as the ebooks and the audiobooks as they're becoming available, because we have an almost complete list of OBOB books for this next year. I believe the last one is coming after the state OBOB, where there's one book that gets decided on. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, and then next meeting is April 17th. 6 p.m. Here, Corey, we'll be here again.
Yeah, we will be here until
Notice.
until further notice. How's that?
Yeah.
I do like being in person.
I do
Yes.
too.
It's fine to do it on Zoom now and again, just because it's more
Yeah.
convenient sometimes. But
Right.
I really do like actually being here.
Yeah, I think that's helpful too.
Okay, 6:34, meeting adjourned.
6:34.
Meet you.
Cherie, thanks for being here.
Sherry.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Safe travels.